It's last call.
It is last call. Hey, welcome back, everybody who stuck around. We appreciate you magnetically being connected to us. That show with Shane Hensley was great, and we definitely want to see you guys show up again. So please make note that we're here every first and third Monday, and we do a 90-minute show with a guest, and then we talk amongst ourselves about a topic, and then we do last call, which is usually something a little controversial or maybe something a little outside the normal bounds that people don't consider in the game world. So I was kind of tasked this week with coming up with an idea to talk about, and I'm just going to throw it out there right now. How can we get people to consider role-playing games, both their participation, purchase of, creation of, whatever it might be, more like board games? And what I mean by that is not necessarily putting out tokens and pieces and more dice and all that. That's great, and I think there's lots of games that are already doing those things. I mean, how do we get to the perception of people to have a closet full of role-playing games like they do of board games? Like they might play something this week and something different next week. How do we break away from the campaign model where you have to people buy into a year of playing one game? And I think this is something we need to break through on, and let's hear what everybody has to say about it.
I don't know. Do you think that, I mean, so instantly when you say that, my hackles instantly raise, and I think of the Star Wars, not Legion, but the, oh my gosh, now of course that I'm going to bring it up. I forget the name. Imperial Assault. And that was all campaign based. Like they like the whole sales model was, I'm going to sell you a new box with new minis, and it's all campaign based. So do you think that's one example? Mice and Mystics was another one where it was all kind of campaign based, but it was a board game. So do you really think that they're going away from, by and large, those two random examples? Do you think that by and large they're going away from that campaign model? Do you think that's a thing?
I think what I'm getting at is you can get people to commit. If I say, Brian, I played this new game called Trellis. It's a game where you build flowers. And you're like, well, I'm not really into flowers. But I say, but it's super fun. It plays in 20 minutes, and it's great for 4 people to have a drink, and you can play 2 or 3 games of it. You'll be like, okay, I think somebody in my group will dig that. I'll buy that. It's $60. Let's do it. How do I get you to do that with a role-playing game? How do I just suggest it to you? And like the next time we get together, you've got the book, and you've got a little sample adventure, and you've got, some little. I think the nature of it is changing. We can't buy into the idea that people are going to commit for a year to play something.
Yeah, I guess all I meant was there's some muddy ground. There appears to be some muddy ground there in the middle where people are board games are trying to tread into the role-playing game market, and role-playing games, to your point, I think should investigate that one night, one shot.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much I can say because I can't find an example of it online, but hypothetically, a very large gaming company could come up with a board game that mirrors half of a board game and half of a really easy role-playing game system, and it could bridge the gap, and it could pull a lot of new players into the field.
Are you thinking things like Frostgrave, Hero Quest, things like that?
It could be similar to that, but actually use some of the rules from a very large popular role-playing game system.
Yeah, I think somebody raised in chat, like, we need a return of the boxed set.
Yeah.
But instead of a boxed set for a setting, like a boxed set game.
Sure. Well, they have those. I mean,
right.
I've got Dungeon of the Mad Mage on my shelf because I fucking love Undermountain. Have I ever played it? Not once.
Right. And there's that Menso Baramson one, right?
Am I sitting on my shelf taking that space?
Right.
So isn't it? I don't know these games well enough, I guess. I always feel like the role playing gets short shrifted because you don't have that continuity. Kind of breeds comfort in sharing your role playing self, and I think a lot of people would rather. If you're going to, like, they sit down to play a game like that and they think, well, I'm playing a board game now, and I shouldn't be talking about what I'm doing. I should just do what's on these cards.
There's
or
yeah,
whatever.
there's absolutely some disparity between what you're supposed to do in a board game, which is move your piece and roll the dice, versus what you're supposed to do in an RPG, which is get into the character and participate collectively with everybody around the table. I think there's a huge gap right there in the middle.
Fiasco.
I don't know what you do. So I will say, going back to the Alien RPG we were talking about earlier, one of the things I do like about that game is that they give you a bunch of what's the word, Jimmy? What's the word what's the character, like the motivations basically.
Personal agendas, you mean?
Yeah, the agendas. Thanks.
Yep.
So they give you an agenda for each act.
Big
You're
word
like,
for you.
okay, for this act. So this tonight when we're playing this board game, this
This is what you've got to accomplish.
act, your agenda is this. This is what you're trying to accomplish. And so the expectation is you're going to get into that role for that particular pre-built character, and maybe that's where you can come up with that for the board game style role playing game.
I'm trying to stay away from agendas.
Yeah, fair enough. And a model for this also might be convention games, where they're just one shots, short arc, 4-hour games. Maybe that's a way to approach it, is to say, tonight we're gonna have board game night, but one of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna play a 2-hour game of D&D, and it's just one encounter. And maybe an independent publisher that we all know could put out something that would be along the lines of how to fight goblins, or how to fight that beholder. It's a couple of hours with a few pre-generated characters that come right out of the box. There's a little tear-off sheet where you get to make some additional stats and make some skill choices. And then you get a bunch of dice. It's filled with dice. So everybody gets their own D20 and all this.
Ooh.
And you get to play through an encounter with goblins, and there's maybe like 6 or 7 maps you can play on. So it's got some replayability. Ooh, dice. Everyone's favorite.
No, Danny, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people are intimidated by role-playing games because they're like, well, aren't there a lot of rules? Isn't that a huge commitment? Board games are beer and pretzel night kind of fun. It's like, oh, we've got the friends and family over. Hey, you guys want to try this board game? Anybody can try a board game, right? So how do we make a role-playing game that is super simple, one-shot ability that anybody and their grandma will try? And by the way, if my grandmother would have played role-playing games with me, she would have been the shit, right? So I'm just saying, like, that's the key. But a lot of like D&D branded board games like Castle Ravenloft, right? You don't even need a game master. It is self-driven, and you could play with 2 people, whereas D&D typically takes 3, 4, 6, 8 players.
How many game nights have been non-start because you didn't have 4 players, right?
For sure. For sure. Many is the answer.
Or conversely, how many game nights went off the rails because you had 9 people that wanted to play and you were going to run for 6 hours?
Right.
That's 56 fucking player hours that you got to like deal with,
That's 3 turns of combat, Danny.
That's 3 turns of combat. Yeah. Are we talking about Shadowrun again?
One turn then, yeah.
One turn then?
Yeah.
So I think now we're hitting
Cyber Samurai took all the turns.
The crux of what I'm getting at is how do we create an experience for people where there's still a GM? Maybe the people even take it in turns. They get special perks or something like this. The point isn't to win. It's just to have a good time.
Isn't it? Isn't that supposed to be?
In like Fiasco, for example, which I don't know if you guys have ever played Fiasco, but one of the things that happens in that game is as you role play, you earn dice to spend by consensus. So if I say, I think Casey's character has gone crazy, and I think we need to all carefully get him into a room and lock him in there. And I role play it out. And then we raise our hands if we think, hey, did Danny do a good job like playing that out? And even Casey says, yeah, I am going crazy. And you make a real good point. Then I get a couple dice to use later in the game that I can then do something with. And Casey, by allowing himself to be put in a compromised position, he gets some dice too. like for playing against, for role playing instead of going for the optimal result. I think there's a lot of ways you could create a game that would be lightweight, something you could play on a game night, like we were playing on Saturday night, Brian.
Absolutely.
We're like, let's play a 20-minute one, let's play a 40-minute one, let's play a 2-hour one. That's our 4 hours of gaming.
Did Spartacus feel more like a role-playing game because we all were totally invested in our houses?
Yes. But I think it's because we're all big-time, long-term nerds. Whereas I think the average person might not do that. And you even said all games don't go like that.
Right. Tell people what I did to you this weekend.
Oh, God.
All manner of despicable things. Brian is a bastard. Eric also a bastard. I can only say nice things about Tara because she was lovely and never. But I suspected that there were bastardy thoughts going through her head too.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun because we all sat down and I looked at my character Calavius and I was like, I immediately embodied him and I tried to act like I wore a white toga, even though I was just as despicable as the rest of you. So yeah, there are games out there that encourage it. I just wish we could get more people into this hobby, more GMs into this hobby, without telling them or saddling them with the idea that they have to invest in all the books right away and run a campaign and everybody better have a good time and you got to have 6 players. No, you need 2 players for 2 hours, a couple times a month. That's where you start.
Right.
That's, I guess, what I was kind of getting at with the agendas for Alien. Not to beat that dead horse, but if you hand a player, we're going to role play this for an hour. That's just 2 of us. Here's your character. Here's their agenda. Here is their equipment. And get into it. Spartacus, I bag on you for Spartacus, but I mean, almost like that with a little bit of an RP element.
Yeah.
I think you've got something. I think that would easily work.
And be fun. Yeah.
And be fun.
Spartacus is a bonkers board game. Like if someone sat down and pitched me that game, honestly, and I'm the gatekeeper and I've been like, no fucking way that'll ever work. And somehow it does. Okay, you've got resource management, you've got gladiatorial combat, you've got betting on assets. By the way, you're also managing this gladiator training camp, and you're fucking over your other players, and you can totally cheat and bribe the other player. What?
And there is a miniatures game where you use dice pools.
Speaking of which, Danny, did you get up to go to the bathroom while you're playing? Because I'm just curious. No reason at all for asking.
I did not, but other people did. Other people did. We did discuss this game as well. Openly advocates cheating, which is an interesting mechanic. And at the end, people were nice enough, unlike when you play poker, people were nice enough to talk about their tells and about their cheats. And it was interesting to see the different types of things people tried to get away with and, in fact, did get away with. Well, I guess we don't need to beat this dead horse. I think the folks in chat have been patient enough. But I just would encourage everybody out there to think of ways. If you want to run a game, do not watch every GM advice video on YouTube. I mean, watch them all, but don't take away from them that you have to do it some particular way. If you can think of a way to run a 2-hour game for 3 people on a Saturday afternoon, and you can get 10 of those in a year, you are playing a role-playing game.
Right.
If you are blessed to have 20 players in your local area and they all want to play once in a while, they can't all play all the time, so you always have 3 or 4, that's great. But that is rare. And if you want to get going online and play remotely, tune into Praetor's Rejects. You'll see a fucking pro. We give Jimmy a lot of shit, but Jimmy is a pro at running remote games. That's another way to play these games. You do not have to be hidebound.
And by pro, we mean prostitute.
I knew it was coming. They couldn't let it go. They just couldn't let it go by, did they? Uh-huh.
In 2019, he was only an amateur statute. Now...
Amateur student. Thanks guys.
But he's up to pro.
I'm a pro.
So everybody One last shout out to a game everybody should try, starting with Jimmy. What game should people go and Google right now before they go to bed?
Earth Dawn.
Earth Dawn, where you need all the fucking dice.
You need a lot of dice, but it's good shit.
But you need all of them. You can't just say, I don't need a D4. You need that D4.
Yeah. Bring Earth
Matt.
Dawn up.
Matt, what about you, buddy? What's your recommendation?
Alien.
Zombie or Alien, the Alien RPG.
Yep. And Brian, what about you?
Yeah, I would say if I had to choose one, I mean, go play Legend of the Five Rings. But I think you need a good game master that's immersed in the setting to really sell it. The mechanics are not hard. You can pick it up very, very quickly.
There's so many. I mean, come on, just get something.
I'm gonna
Year
say
Zero is what I was trying to think of, but yeah, Alien is based on Year Zero.
I'm gonna say look it up now, but the next time you go to convention, if you can't get one going locally, play Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu is
Touche. Can I change my answer? Yeah.
all right. Hey, everybody. This has been Wizards of the Couch Last Call Show. I'm here, Danny Lee Grimes, also Jimmy Duffy, Matt KC Rift, and Brian Berg. We will be here every first and third Monday of the month. We got Cobalt Con coming up. You can find out about that in our social media channels. And you can also find out about upcoming stuff we got going on. Thursday, later this week, we'll have Whose Monster Is It Anyway?, where Matt will be sitting down with artist in resident Phil Stone to come up with a completely unique and new monster where that Phil will illustrate while we are actually static.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can come over
And
you can come over to Prater's and watch me kill more people for another set of aliens. So come back and forth. You got 2 channels Thursday night.
That's
Great
right. Hey,
program.
Brian, real quick, what's the next convention you're going to be coming to in my hometown?
Well, the next convention I'm going to is C2E2 in Chicago.
Oh, that's right.
However, the next one in your hometown will be Midwest Gaming Classic. I'll be in Milwaukee. So for those of you who are into video games, that is a huge video game show, but they are really going out of their way to expand their tabletop gaming. And you will see me there. You will see Danny there. You will see Eric Frankhouse there. We'll be running a shit ton of games.
Don't forget about Cobalt Con happening in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Don't forget about Gary Con coming at the end of March. If you want to get involved in this hobby, the best thing you can do is go to a convention and meet all of us, rub elbows, and learn what it takes. We're all super approachable, and we'll gladly help you find your way in this world.
And Danny would love to hear about your character. Not me. I've heard them all. Danny would know.
Brian, write him an essay. I'll give you his email address.
You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thanks, folks. We are going to call it here for the night. We'll see y'all in 3 weeks.
Next time.
Yeah. Good night, chat. Thank you so much for all your love.
See ya. Y'all be good.